What's up? What's going on? Ed Crikey, follower, subscriber on the channel. Want to know what I thought about William Wordsworth and his sonneteering. Wordsworth probably is best known for the Prelude, which is a masterpiece of the English language. Surprised by Joy, I guess, inspired C.S. Lewis to steal its title for a book of his. Let's have a look. Let's see if William Wordsworth and his Surprised by Joy measures up to the lofty standard set by Edna St. Vincent Millay. Although the chronology is kind of goofed up here, guys, right? Because Wordsworth was kind of there first. But let's have a look anyway. Let's see what we think, right? Surprised by Joy. Surprised by joy, impatient as the wind, I turn to share the transport. Oh, with whom but thee? Long buried in the silent tomb, that spot which no vicissitude can find. Love, faithful love, recalled thee to my mind. But how could I forget thee? Through what power, even for the least division of an hour, have I been so beguiled to be blind to my most grievous loss? That thought's return was the worst pang that sorrow ever bore, save one, only one, when I stood forlorn, knowing my heart's best treasure was no more, that neither present time nor years unborn could to my sight that heavenly face restore. So let's unpack a little bit. I don't think this is a super easy sonnet. So Ed is throwing down with something that's pretty tough to kind of grasp here. And one of the things that initially threw me was this kind of the thee and the thou in the poem. I will just take a quick moment to discuss this. So a lot of times readers today, when we encounter these thee and thou, we assume it means it's more formal, because maybe we heard these things in church and we assume, okay, it's an important ceremony if the and thou are in there. But when you go back to Shakespeare, you realize that he would use that form of address when a aristocratic person was talking to an inferior or someone who they did not have respect for. And it's also was conventionally used for parents to talk to children. So the fact that it's used in many faith traditions to address the divine is kind of a relic of the fact that thee was once a more intimate form of address. I love thee would be what you would say to someone instead of I love you, when you're having a romantic moment. It is, in fact, a more intimate and more, it's something you could only say to someone who you know very well or who is beneath you in status. So I think that confounds our ear a little bit. And I think this poem threw me for a little bit of a loop because of that. So who is Wordsworth addressing? I think that probably the most straightforward literal reading is to say, he's surprised, the speaker is surprised by joy, impatient as the wind. So maybe the speaker observed something happen, the sun struck the trees, or there was a fond, recalled a fond meal or some silly story, and goes to turn to a companion who's no longer there. So the beloved here is no longer there. They're long buried in the silent tomb, that spot which no vicissitude can find. So no change or alteration could possibly find, meaning meet or bring them back. So that's kind of the first four lines of the octave. And then the second four lines of the octave, then love, faithful love, recalled thee to my mind. So it's a good positive feeling, which is love recalled. But then the speaker remembers, well, that means that I must have forgotten about you. Even for the least division of an hour, have I been so beguiled as to be blind? So that then wraps up that second octave with this kind of crisis, this moment of crisis that the speaker thinks perhaps, their love is lost, or their ability, their capacity to love and be faithful forever is gone. Even though here they make this stress, love, faithful love, I should be always faithful, but they're unable to be fully faithful because by the end of the octave they've been blind, they've been unfaithful, they've been beguiled by something. By what? So then we have the action of the volta, which I call, as you guys all know now, the pivot to the eternal. Now, how do you get more eternal than this? That's kind of a challenge of this poem, is we're already talking about the afterlife. We're already talking about death. We're already talking about these eternal things. How do we get more eternal? Plus, this kind of a weird volta. It's just a run-on sentence. Have I been so beguiled as to be blind to my most grievous loss? There's no change in status there, but then we have another one of these Wordsworth hyphens. That thought's return was the worst pang that sorrow ever bore. Now, this is just digging a deeper hole for this poem. Things just keep getting worse. Save one, only one, when I stood forlorn, knowing my heart's best treasure was no more. So the death of the beloved was the worst moment of the speaker's life and existence. And neither present time nor years unborn could, to my sight, that harks back to the blindness at the end of the octave, could to my sight that heavenly face restore. Totally bleak ending, right? So this is not a happy poem. It's the brief moment of joy that I was surprised by ended up reminding me of the worst moment of my life and my loss of you. And now I'm basically completely, for lack of a better term, in the shitter. Like, it sucks so bad, the exit of this poem. So first, I would say to Ed Crikey, what the hell, man? Like, this poem's such a bummer. Why'd you send me such a bummer? Right? And then I think, well, why is the poem called Surprised by Joy when it's really surprised by feeling shitty? So I have to go back and reread it. And now then, the thee and thou, we have this other possible way to read the poem, another possible approach. The thee in the poem could, in fact, be a analogy or a kind of a secret code for Jesus Christ or for God, right? So who would be long buried in the tomb? It would be Jesus who was long buried in the tomb and then gets up and comes out later and goes for a stroll and visits his followers, right? And his faithful, many of them doubted that would happen. Some of them were, but a lot of them doubted. They were blind. They were deceived. A lot of people didn't believe Jesus was going to get back up and walk around. This worst sorrow, is also this kind of condition of being alive. This sinful state of being alive. This flawed existence that we have. That then the best treasure, right, would be kind of eternal life, that neither present time nor years unborn, nothing we do in our walking day, in our everyday days, waking life is equal to the eternal life that the true beloved Jesus Christ could offer the speaker. So that's another way to read this poem, and really cued into this heavenly face restore. And that gives the volta a little bit more potential for drama, because it really does offer us this other religious perspective. Although that is teed up by the octave, it really does amplify in the sestet quite a bit. And then you could say that the loss of the beloved here is this opportunity for the speaker to consider this religious dimension, that these losses, these things that we suffer in life that are so painful and horrible, could in fact give us this vantage to contemplate or to prepare ourselves for salvation. So they're kind of an opportunity in there, and that could really be the joy that the poem could be alluding to. Now, I don't know. That's just one reading, right? That's just like one thing I would give. Do I think, in the end of the day, like this poem to me speaks to me the way the Edna St. Vincent Millay does? It's not really fair to compare, because Edna St. Vincent Millay was writing kind of in this jazz age. She's writing in a language that's timeless, but is more closer to our register of how people speak and talk and relate. She doesn't use thee and thou in her poem. There's everything seems fresh and lively in a way. If you put on a Louis Armstrong album, it's still going to register to you in this immediate, fresh, vivid way, in a way that Brahms won't. So I don't know. I think it's kind of an unfair comparison. I do think, were I to say to compare Wordsworth to Shakespeare, I would probably choose Shakespeare over that, because what I would like to see in a sonnet is I'd like to see that it's dominated by feeling and imagery. So one of the early sonnets we did this Alice Dunbar Nelson sonnet on violets. And this violet image she introduces quickly as a central conceit, and then it amplifies it and gives it all this poignancy. And when you're done with the poem, you're still almost smelling this aroma of it. While this Wordsworth, what's the central imagery here? The tomb? The wind? The treasure? The blindness? It doesn't have a strong unifying image or set of images in the way a great Shakespearean sonnet or a Millais sonnet does. Rhetorically, I think it's expert. Wordsworth, if you're a Wordsworth lover, if you love his work, you obviously love the prelude, where there's this perfect balance of kind of thinking, reasoning, ruminating, meditating, and feeling, and self-discovery, and sensing. And all those things are in balance. The thinking and feeling are perfectly balanced, and the language is able to do both very elegantly. This tries to do that. It tries to have both thinking and feeling at the same time. But I feel the sonnet's capacity for intellection, while powerful, and especially in the sestet, the sonnet can offer us philosophy, can offer us depth of perception that is unrivaled in many other poetic forms. It's still not primarily a vehicle for thinking. Feeling and instinct should guide and dominate the sonnet. And the reasoning, the rhetorical part, the argument that a sonnet makes, really has to be about trying to come to terms with how we feel about things, not necessarily trying to come up with these, deal with these very complex intellectual issues. So things like this no vicissitude, to me, it's a little heavy, or even the least division of an hour. Well, that would be a very pleasant idea, the least division of an hour. In blank verse, in an unhurried, 50, 70, 150 lines, it would be very, very, very pleasing. But in a sonnet, you miss the opportunity for imagery, to advance the imagery forward. However, I think this is a delightful poem because it can be read on two levels, and I think that's interesting. We looked at some George Herbert religious poems, and I'm a huge fan of George Herbert. And if you recall, George Herbert is able to appropriate this kind of business language of his era, legalese, and then twist it and make it extremely strange and poignant, powerful. Similarly, I think Wordsworth is able to kind of appropriate these emotions of grief and loss and confusion and disorientation and twist them into something that is really kind of thought-provoking and interesting. So what is it to have these? What is the pleasure of grief in this way? It's subtle. It rewards rereading. So thank you, Ed Crikey, for offering this for us. And as always, I absolutely love to have suggestions come in for sonnets people want to look at. It's kind of the lifeblood of what we do here is building a community and exploring things together. That's the best way to have fun, is to do things together. Okay, folks, thanks for joining me again, and I look forward to seeing everybody soon. Have a good one.